I'm back. And this is a new segment called Back in the Day. Now, in this new vid series, I'll be talking about video game genres or series that have kind of degraded, and I'll be examining why I feel this is the case, and you know what are the root causes, and how said franchise can come back. Um, or genre, okay? Um, I'll be covering, hopefully, knock on wood, I'll be covering beat 'em ups, fighting games, but I'm going to start the first vid in this series off on a bang. A series that I've always loved, a series of games, a genre that I've always loved, and that literally made me into the gamer that I am today. I'm talking about RPGs. Stay tuned while we delve into how RPGs started out so high and became so low. Here we go. Okay then. In order to understand how RPGs have degraded, we have to understand where they started. All RPG games have their roots in the old school D&D role-playing style games. Tabletop, character sheets, dice. Okay, all of them. Even before D&D, there were RPG games. And all of those RPGs have their roots in the Tolkien, Robert Jordan, um, fantastic Arthurian mythological roots with elves and dwarves and dragons and all those types of wonderful things. Now, you might ask yourself, what was the major catalyst behind all of this? Well, D&D came out. Gary Gygax. Now, there were D&D style games before D&D ever came out, but they weren't as refined or as ritualized and regimented. See, Dungeons & Dragons basically made it, gave us a system, rules, regulations, a way to basically create, to live in this world. Plus, there were the Dungeon Master books, which really began to build this fantastic world. Now, at its heart, RPGs have always been about strategy, planning, preparation. Okay? It's about putting in hard work for payoff in the distance, not immediate gratification. Remember that, it's important. Now, in order to understand how RPGs got to the point where they were console-style RPGs, you have to understand the first console-style RPGs. If you've ever played Might and Magic, the RPG games, or, Wizardry, you're seeing the beginnings, you're seeing the first style of RPGs. They were first-person, wandering through a dungeon with a party, fighting monsters, and generally just trying to stay alive to your next encounter. And they were pretty tough. I mean, I'm not messing around. These RPGs were hard. In some ways, they were even harder than the RPGs, than tabletop RPGs. If you don't believe me, go play a Wizardry game now. One of the old school ones. If you don't have an old NES or an SNES, I would go play an emulator. Go on the PSN and get Wizardry 5, or Steam and get Wizardry 5. Oh my god, that game is hard. And it's easier than earlier iterations, okay? Very tough games. And that's how RPGs were. They were very niche, very, very specialized, but we got some good games. We got Might and Magic, we got Wizardry, other games of that ilk. A good Japanese example of this would be Princess Tomato on the NES, or Wizardry on the NES, or Sega's Shining in the Darkness. first person wandering through a dungeon fighting monsters. But then a console style game came out in Japan, right? That on the NES that really changed the game. Okay? And no, it's not Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy was Square's they had been failing, and Final Fantasy was their final chance at making a hit game, and it worked, and history was born. But I'm not talking about Final Fantasy. I'm talking about the granddaddy of console-style RPGs. The one that basically made the console-style RPG with the wandering around, the grinding, the leveling up, and melded the concepts behind tabletop RPGs with the sensibilities of a console-style first-person RPG and changed the game entirely. This game was Dragon Quest. The very first Dragon Quest by Enix. This game was the shit. It was illustrated by Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame. And this game was just very good. You know, it was just very good, and it started the tropes that have become a mainstay of good RPGs. Grinding, leveling up, you know, fighting enemies, you know when you're not supposed to go somewhere because you'll go there and get your ass handed to you in one fight. You know, oh, well, I shouldn't have gone there, and lose half your money, be revived at the temple, and start all over again. And that's how games used to be. That's how it used to be. I know some people are going to get mad. Well, that's not nice. That's how the games used to be. That's what happened back in the day. These people who say, I don't like grinding in video games and RPGs, you don't know what an RPG is about. You liked grinding. You were like, man, if I make that next level, I might learn a new skill. You never knew. You'd become stronger. And how did you know you were ready to move on to the next area? When the toughest enemy in that area you could kill in 1 or 2 hits. Then you were like, I'm strong enough. And move on to the next area. People have forgotten that joy, that love of grinding and becoming more powerful and kicking ass. So, but it began with Dragon Quest, which, despite many of its tropes, did not have a lot of the modern conveniences we would think of in an RPG now. There weren't parties in the first Dragon Quest. It was just you, the hero, Erdrick, or Eric, you know, the descendant of the hero of the past, Loto. Okay? And you basically were fighting by yourself. The max level in Dragon Quest was 20. So even grinding wasn't as, you know, you weren't going to be overpowered for the final boss, because I played that game on the NES and the a Satellaview SNES version of it, and and I have it on my GameCube. I mean, my Game Boy Color, and level 20 is the max level you have in that game. And even then, the final boss is a son of a bitch to fight. So, you know, you really had to know how to use your skills and when to use special attacks and prepare. You know, do I have enough herbs? Do I have enough heals? Do I have enough magic rings to restore my MP? You know, is my armor the best humanly possible armor? You know. Yeah. Now, there were a few things in your favor. Items could be used inside or outside of battle for certain abilities. Like, you could use a power shield to heal yourself for 30 HP, which, you know, meant you didn't have to use your heals, your MP to heal yourself. You could use an antidote ring to heal yourself from poison. So, you know, there were certain things you could do in order to get around it, but generally, you had to be aware, you had to plan, be aware of what was going on around you, be aware of your equipment. It was like the best of all the worlds. Now, the menu system was clunky as shit. You had to press the activation button, and then you'd have to scroll through a menu to look down, to search the ground, to open a door, to talk to someone. It was very clunky, but this was the first console-style RPG. You have to crawl before you can walk. And this game was crawling very quickly and working itself up. And then came Final Fantasy a short time afterwards. Some people love it. The first Final Fantasy is, caught on like wildfire. Whereas Dragon Quest was always very Japanese. But it still was a damn good game. Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, and culminating with 5, 6, 7, and ending with... After 7, they were bought by Square and became Square Enix, and Dragon Quest has kind of hit the rails. But the older games are just the shit. Now, the high point of the RPG genre. We had great games coming from Enix, great games coming from Square, great games coming from Atlas, great RPGs coming from other Japanese-style RPGs. We also had great RPGs coming out from the West, okay? We had the Temple of Elemental Evil and Planescape Torment, Neverwinter Nights, Baldur's Gate, let's see, what else did we have? Daggerdale. Great console D&D great PC D&D rooted RPGs with stats and classes and parties and all the stuff that we've come to love. And what did all of these games have in common? They catered to their niche. Okay, they didn't dumb themselves down. Excuse me. They didn't dumb themselves down. They weren't casual. If you wanted to get into these games, you had to put in the quality time to get good at them. Like anything. Sports, relationships, anything. No one comes out into something and it's just, they pick it up immediately. Unless you're a prodigy. You'd have to work at it. And these games were great. They were awesome. But something terrible began to happen in the late 90s, early 2000s. They began to make RPGs more casual. And that leads me to the decline of RPGs, which will be coming up after the cut. Okay then, here we go. Now we'll talk about the decline of RPGs. As I said, casualness of RPGs, to make them accessible to people who really wouldn't be interested in RPG. Now, in order to understand why this is a problem, you have to understand what an RPG is. An RPG is a role-playing game, normally typified by you gaining experience, leveling up, and growing in skills. Okay? Is The Legend of Zelda an RPG? Hell no. Why? Because Link never gets stronger under his own power. It's always shit that he finds, okay? He finds heart pieces, that increases his health. He finds the Master Sword, that makes his attacks more powerful. He finds bombs, that lets him blow up holes. I mean, it's always shit that he's finding. Now, does that make The Legend of Zelda a lesser game? Does that somehow take away from how badass it is? No. But, I mean, if someone says, I like RPGs, I like The Legend of Zelda. The Legend of Zelda is not an RPG. It's not. The Legend of Zelda is an action-adventure game. The first Legend of Zelda is an open-world action-adventure game. Skyward Sword is an action-adventure game on rails. I'm joking. Partially. But it's not an RPG. Think of an RPG like this, okay? believe it or not, if you've ever played any of the Kunio-kun Power Pro games, which are sports baseball games, where you basically create a character and you do exercises in order to increase their stats, which make them play better, run faster, hit the ball harder, throw the ball faster, you know, do all types of cool stuff. These games, that is an RPG. You're literally becoming more powerful by doing the same action over and over and over again, training to become more powerful so that you can win. That is an RPG at its heart. And if you take that character and make a backstory for them, give them a motive for revenge, you have an RPG game right there. Now, the flaw with a lot of these games is that they've sought to dumb down the RPG. Because RPGs at their heart, even the old school D&D ones, required you to invest effort into this game. They weren't for people, well, I just play RPGs every once in a while. You had to be dedicated to this shit, okay? Trust me. I have spent over... I've been playing the Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning recently for another video where I reviewed it. And I'm 130 hours in, I still haven't done all the side quests. I've done the major factional ones, I've done the major side quests, but there's still tons of stuff left. That is a lot of content, okay? I haven't even hit my level cap yet, which I believe is 50. So basically, you know, RPGs are, I mean, you gotta put in the quality time. An RPG is a lot like a relationship. You gotta put in the QT, man. You gotta put in the QT, the quality time, in order to get your payoff, okay? If you take away the quality time that true RPGers enjoy, like I enjoy leveling up my character. I enjoy getting new weapons. I enjoy the exploration aspect of an RPG. Oh, look at that town. I wonder what new weapons are there. I wonder what new side quests I'll be able to get. I wonder how I can advance the story. That is the joy of an RPG. That is the joy of an RPG. It's what's around that corner? What's behind that door? You know, what new adventure am I going to go on next? A lot of the shittier RPGs we've seen this and last gen have lost that quality. Final Fantasy XIII is the perfect example. There's like 2 towns in the entire fucking game. No weapon or item shops. I mean, what type of bullshit is that? And they've made 2 sequels. Final Fantasy doesn't do well with sequels. I'm just... if you didn't know, Final Fantasy doesn't do well with sequels. So basically, we're losing. People are cutting off the parts of an RPG that make it an RPG in order to make it more appealing for people who don't like RPGs. Which is the equivalent of someone saying, I'm going to make a hamburger, but for people who don't like hamburgers. So let's get rid of the burger, let's get rid of the cheese, let's get rid of the bacon, let's get rid of the lettuce, tomato, mayo, the bun. What you have left... This is a burger for vegetarians, so they give you a burger patty with wrapped in mayo with organic ketchup. If you've never had organic ketchup, it tastes like shit. And for someone who loves burgers, they're like, you know, to be polite, this is okay. But as soon as they go home, they fix themselves an all-beef patty. Fried, medium rare, toasted bun, mayo, black pepper, a pinch of salt, maybe a little bit of ketchup, a little bit of mustard. Eat it. These people are basically taking RPGs and taking away all the things that make them an RPG. I've heard that Lightning Returns is a hack and slash. It's a hack and slash. With no party characters, you just play as Lightning. But it's an RPG, says Square Enix. And I'm laughing because it's sad. This is not laughter of joy. This is a laughter because this shit is just... It's like the people that made great RPGs don't know how to make them anymore. I used Square Enix as a JRPG example, but let's go to America. BioWare. You cannot tell me that Mass Effect 3 is as good as 2, or even 1. You cannot tell me that Dragon Age 2 is as good as Dragon Age Origins. Frankly speaking, I don't have much hope for Dragon Age 3 or Mass Effect 4. Or they're calling it codename Mass Effect 4. It's probably not going to be Mass Effect 4. But I don't have much hope for it. I'm going to play them because I love RPGs, but it's just, it's painful. It's like watching an old friend, an old girlfriend that you used to hang out with, and you still are friends, but now she's hanging out with the cool crowd, and she's gradually losing all the shit that made her so awesome to hang out with the cool crowd. That's what's happening to RPGs now. Next, I'll be covering how to fix it, because this actually can be fixed. Okay, I'm back. And now we're going to talk about how RPGs can come back. Because I fervently believe RPGs can come back. How? For one thing, remember that RPGs aren't about graphics. If I hear one more Square Enix exec or BioWare design or program analyst, designer, whatever, if I hear one more RPG maker say, the game looks gorgeous. Look, RPGs have their roots in tabletop games. You really did not know shit that was going on. The only way you had any graphical idea is if you knew someone who was really good at art and drew their character. Or you had your real, impetus, your real handle on what was going on in the gaming world was if you had a good dungeon master who could describe what was happening. And we're not seeing this. We're saying, oh, the graphics are great. Don't care about the graphics in an RPG. Tell me, is the story compelling? Do I care about the characters? Is the battle system awesome? I don't give a shit about the graphics. Case in point, Final Fantasy XIII, a shitty game. It basically gets its ass handed to it in terms of sheer playability by Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI used Mode 7 and pixels. Still a much better game than Final Fantasy XIII. And it's better than 7 too. Yes, I said it. Final Fantasy VI is better than 7. As a matter of fact, Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger are very close together. I'd have to edge it out with Chrono Trigger because Chrono Trigger just was a little bit better. But both of them are pretty good games. Both of them shit off of everything else that Square has made since the SNES generation. So, I'm saying it. So, how can RPGs come back, including console-style RPGs? Stop trying to be casual. If someone doesn't want to put in the quality time to build their party, equip their characters, plan things out, fuck them. Stop spending loads of money on graphical engines on an RPG. It doesn't need it. It's like someone using the Havok engine in a Tetris game. It's fucking Tetris. You don't need fantastic graphics for Tetris. Okay. Number 3. Look at your past games that people love. Look at your current games that people hate. See the differences between the two franchises. Implement what was good in the past. Cast off what people hate now. And if you see, here's the thing. RPGs are a niche title. They're never going to be everyone's bag. So stop trying to please everyone. Because now you're pleasing no one. And that's not good. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I guess the overall thing that all both Japanese RPGs and Western RPGs can remember is that I'm getting pretty damn tired of is CGI cutscenes. Look, I'm tired of CGI cutscenes that make your character look like a badass doing some shit they never do throughout the entire friggin' game. Enough is enough. It's false advertising. Stop doing that. Okay then, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'll bring us to the conclusion, which will begin after this. Okay then, now it's time for the conclusion. And the conclusion is simple. RPGs, especially JRPGs, and even Western RPGs, are beginning to lose their quality. And the reason why is because of, them becoming more casual and trying to appeal to a wider audience. And that's wrong because, RPGs are always going to be niche, okay? Not everyone is going to like an RPG, okay? Anyone can pick up a Mario game. Anyone can pick up Call of Duty. Anyone can pick up a platformer. Anyone can pick up a kart racer. But RPGs are very niche, especially the good ones. I have friends who love Mario, never played Super Mario RPG or Paper Mario. So, we need to go back to basics. Back to basics. That's the conclusion. Back to basics. Let's go back to what we know works. Because clearly, trying to appeal to graphic whores and people who don't really appreciate RPGs to start with has not been working. So stop it. But if RPG manufacturers and developers can go back to basics, we can see a resurgence of the RPG franchise. A resurgence. And that makes me happy because I love RPGs. And before I go, I will state my RPG street cred, okay? I have played and owned Dragon Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've played 10. I hate it. 10's a piece of shit. I own Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12. I haven't played 11 or 14 because fuck MMORPGs. fuck them taking an RPG and turning it into an MMO. They're two fundamentally different things. But I also have RPGs that are not that don't belong to the big two. I'm talking Earthbound, Lufia, Lufia 2, Lufia 3, Lufia Rise of the Lufia The Ruins of Lore. Oh my god, tons of Shin Megami Tensei games. Tons of them. I have that weird Game Boy Color one that is a Shin Megami Tensei game, but they didn't release it in America as a Shin Megami Tensei game because Nintendo and their censorship. I have a fully translated Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 for the SNES. I have a Shin Megami Tensei 3, Shin Megami Tensei 4. I bought that. Persona 3 and 4. I kind of didn't like Persona until I got the PS2 one, so sue me. Sue me, okay? Those awesome Monokamiya alchemy games, their precursors, you know, Alchemist of whatever, Alchemist of this, all those games, those awesome Nippon Ichi games. So yeah, I'm a major RPG fan, and that's just JRPGs. I have all of the PC big hitters, Baldur's Gates. I have the Beholder, Might and Magic, Daggerdale, all that stuff. I'm a major RPG fan. I love the strategic. It's very cathartic for me to plan a raid and just like have it go off without a hitch, you know, to set an enemy up and crush them in battle. But that brings me to my final point. We need to go back. We need to go back to the basics of an RPG, because trying to casualize them, to make them casual and, you know, widely acceptable, is killing it. is killing the genre. So, back to basics. Okay then, that's the end of this video, and it was a long one. Please leave your comments in the comment section, whether you liked it or not, and I'll probably come up with something for Back in the Day number 2.